Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone you once thought was your future. Maybe it's a partner, a friend, or even family. You know them. Their favorite song, the way their mouth moves when they lie, the shape of their soul when they're hurting. You've been their witness. And now you're their ghost. They're talking, but you've stopped listening. Not out of disrespect, but because something has shifted. Not in them, in you. You're not angry. You're not even sad anymore. You're just still, like the ocean before a storm. You nod. You smile. You do all the expected things. But deep inside, you feel the tectonic plates of your being shifting, an inner detachment that terrifies you more than the heartbreak itself. Because this isn't just about them, it's about you. About the version of you that was entangled in their gaze. About the identity you built with them as the scaffolding. And now without them, who are you? That's when it hits you. You weren't holding on to the person. You were holding on to the story of love, validation, belonging. You were attached to the role they played in your life's theater. And now as the curtain closes, you're left asking the one question no one wants to confront. How do you emotionally detach from someone without abandoning yourself? The modern world gives you answers. Block them. Focus on yourself. Go no contact. But what if it's deeper than that? What if detachment isn't about forgetting them, but remembering you? What if the real question isn't how to let them go, but how to stop being the version of you that needed them? This isn't a breakup. It's a death. Not of them, of the illusions you clung to. The fantasy of permanence in a world built on impermanence. The delusion that love means possession. The silent belief that someone else is the key to your emotional stability. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." But here's the paradox. How do you enjoy, love, or even breathe when the person who once made those things feel meaningful is now a stranger? Aurelius, like the Stoics before him, believed in apatheia, a serene state of mind untouched by external chaos. But that doesn't mean cold indifference. No, true Stoic detachment is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. The question is not should I feel, because you do. It's can I hold my feelings without being held hostage by them? What if Stoicism isn't about suppressing pain, but about confronting it so deeply, so honestly, that it loses its power to define you? Imagine detachment not as building walls, but as setting down weapons, not as running away, but as standing still while the storm passes through you. Imagine looking into the eyes of the one who once had your heart and realizing they don't anymore. And instead of feeling empty, you feel free. But that freedom doesn't come easy. You'll have to pass through fire. You'll have to confront every part of yourself that clings, craves, and believes you are less without them. You'll have to face the voices in your head whispering, what if they change? What if you never find someone like them again? What if this pain never ends? You'll have to ask yourself the question that Stoicism forces into the light. Why does their presence or absence hold so much power over your peace? Because until you answer that, you are not living. You are reacting to their choices, to your past, to a future that may never come. And so you stand at the edge of silence, of space, of detachment. You realize this was never about losing someone. It was always about rediscovering you. Not the you shaped by others' love or rejection, but the you who remains when everything else is stripped away. Now imagine taking one step forward, not toward them, but into yourself. Next comes the hidden problem. What if your emotional dependency isn't just personal but philosophical? What if society, psychology, and ancient instincts all conspire to make letting go nearly impossible? You didn't fall for them. You fell for what they mirrored in you. The attention, the resonance, the fantasy of finally being seen. But behind that resonance was something deeper, a psychological gravity pulling you into their orbit. And this force wasn't just emotional. It was existential, ancient. Attachment is not love, it's survival. When someone looks at you with softness, it activates more than the heart. It triggers the limbic brain, the primal circuitry that once determined life or death based on tribal inclusion. To be excluded from the tribe thousands of years ago meant death. Today, to lose someone you're emotionally entangled with, it feels like death, because in a way it is. The self you were in relation to them begins to dissolve. And the human psyche, which craves identity like lungs crave oxygen, resists this dissolution with everything it has. That's the hidden problem. Letting go of someone is not just about them. It's about the psychological scaffolding you built around their presence. Remove them and entire parts of you begin to collapse. Carl Jung called this collapse withdrawal of projection. He said that we don't really fall in love with people. We fall in love with our own unconscious elements projected onto them. You thought they were kind. You crave kindness. You thought they were powerful. You're disconnected from your own power. You saw them as your savior, you haven't yet become your own. And when the illusion crumbles, it's not the person you grieve, it's the loss of who you were when you were with them. The childlike version of you who believed they could be saved. The idealist who believed someone else could heal what you refused to face. But here lies the greatest irony. You didn't really want them. You wanted the version of yourself that you became in their presence. They were a mirror, and when the mirror is taken away, you don't know how to see yourself clearly anymore. This is the agony of emotional dependency. It masquerades as connection, but it is, at its root, a spiritual amnesia. Nietzsche once warned that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how, and most people make others their why. That's why when the relationship ends, their entire existence collapses. Not because of heartbreak, but because of identity death. This is not just psychology, it's a crisis of being. Sartre spoke of the gaze of the other, how we only become real to ourselves through the eyes of another. When someone loves us, their gaze confirms our existence. When they leave, we begin to question if we were ever truly seen at all. This is where emotional detachment becomes so complex. Because to detach from someone isn't just about moving on. It's about reclaiming the self from all the projections, illusions, and borrowed meanings you wrapped around them. It's about becoming whole without the audience. Schopenhauer believed that human suffering stems from desire. We want, we crave, we believe we need. But the Stoics challenged that narrative with radical simplicity. You suffer not because they left. You suffer because you believed you needed them to be whole. This isn't to say pain isn't real. It is. The ache in your chest, the empty space where their voice used to echo. It's real. But the cause of that ache, that's where the illusion lies. Aurelius would urge you to ask, is what you're feeling within your control? And if not, why let it disturb your peace? That's the seed of Stoicism. Not to become heartless, but to become free. But how can you tell if you're trapped in the illusion? Look for these signs. You replay conversations, hoping to rewrite them in your mind. You fantasize about them returning, not because you want them, but because you want relief. You feel disoriented, like a part of you went missing when they walked away. You confuse their presence with your purpose. This is the disease of false identity. The belief that you plus them, you. But here's the truth buried beneath centuries of conditioning. You are not what they brought out in you. You are what remains when they're gone. And this is where philosophy collides with psychology. Because modern culture teaches you to attach, to equate connection with salvation, to make love your religion and partners your gods. But philosophy, real ancient philosophy, asks you to do something much harder. It asks you to look at your pain with unwavering clarity, to trace it not to them but to your deepest assumptions about self-worth, identity, and love. Aldous Huxley once said, "The truth that makes men free is for the most part the truth which men prefer not to hear." And here's that truth. You never needed them. You only needed to meet the version of yourself you thought only they could awaken. But that version of you, it's not lost. It's simply waiting. And now we arrive at a darker revelation. What if this attachment, this dependency, has consequences that go far beyond personal heartbreak? What if you've been living in a mental prison all along and didn't even know it? There's a prison with no bars, no guards, no locks, just a mirror, and behind it the version of you who only knows how to feel whole in someone else's eyes. You walk through life thinking you're free, but every decision, every emotional high and low, is tied to invisible strings, not pulled by your hands but by theirs. The person you couldn't let go of, the one who left or stayed but never truly saw you. This is the silent epidemic of our time. Emotional dependence, masquerading as connection, longing mistaken for love, bonding built not on strength but on fear. And what makes this trap so dangerous is how normal it feels. Society doesn't warn you about it. It romanticizes it. Movies tell you that you're incomplete without your other half. Pop songs sell heartbreak as proof of how deeply you loved. Even self-help books teach you to move on by finding someone better. But no one tells you the truth. Your attachment to someone else can cost you your sovereignty. Not just emotionally, cognitively, spiritually. You stop making choices based on your values. You start shaping yourself around their preferences. Even after they're gone, you measure your worth by their absence. You become a ghost of who you could be. Let's bring in the science. Neuroscientist Jack Panksepp identified 7 core emotional systems in the brain. One of them, the panic grief system. It's the same one activated when a child is separated from their parent, or when someone loses a loved one. Now here's what most don't realize. That same neurological system activates during a breakup or emotional detachment. Your brain interprets loss not as an event, but as a threat to your survival. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your mind, goes dark. And what takes over? Your limbic brain. The part that doesn't care about your future, your goals, or your well-being. It just wants the pain to stop. This is why you text them when you know you shouldn't. Why you replay old memories, hoping for a different ending. Why you stalk their social media and pretend it's just curiosity, because your brain isn't looking for closure. It's looking for a fix, and you've made them your drug. The Stoics called this enslavement. Not to chains or rulers, but to passions. Desires that control you. Fears that blind you. Emotions that disguise themselves as truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But here's the catch. You can't access that power if your mind is no longer your own. And when you're entangled in emotional dependency, your mind becomes a battlefield, not between love and loss, but between who you are and who you fear you'll be without them. Let's go deeper. Your identity, yourself, is shaped by narrative. And if the story you've told yourself is, "They made me feel alive," then without them, the story falls apart. You experience narrative collapse. Suddenly, your memories become a curse. Your imagination becomes a cage, and your future, blank. But you don't mourn the person. You mourn the world you built around them, a world that felt safe, familiar, filled with meaning, and now, that world is gone. This is the cost of false attachment. It doesn't just take away your peace, it rewrites your reality. It makes you suspicious of solitude, afraid of silence, dependent on external validation to feel inner truth. Even your goals, your ambitions, start to reflect the ghost of what was, instead of the possibility of what could be. You start achieving things not to grow but to prove something to them. You craft your identity around a question they stopped asking. You become performative in your healing, smiling on the outside, decaying in private. This is what the Stoics feared most, not pain but loss of control over the self. And yet it's so easy to dismiss this as just heartbreak. It's not. It's existential erosion. Because over time, the longer you remain attached, the more you forget how to exist without them. Your moral compass shifts. Your daily rituals revolve around memories, not meaning. You lose the ability to stand still without looking back. And here's the final consequence, perhaps the most haunting. You start to attach to others in the same way, repeating the cycle not because you want to, but because your mind has been trained to associate closeness with dependency. You mistake chemistry for destiny. You confuse emotional intensity with compatibility. You pursue people not because they're aligned with your values, but because they remind you of them. This is the blueprint of emotional addiction. And unless you break the pattern, you'll continue seeking healing in the very source of your wounds. But what if there's another way? What if you could rewire your mind, not to feel less, but to feel freely without clinging? What if detachment isn't the end of love, but the beginning of a deeper, freer version of it? The Stoics didn't preach emotional coldness. They preached emotional clarity, to care without collapsing, to love without losing yourself, to walk away without walking empty. This is not just philosophy, it's liberation. But before we get there, you must first rebel. Not against them, against the idea that you ever needed them to be whole. You've been taught your whole life that to love deeply means to suffer. That heartbreak is noble. That longing is proof of connection. That detachment is cold, cruel, unfeeling. But what if all of that is a lie? What if the deepest love isn't about holding on but knowing how to let go without falling apart? What if freedom isn't found in forgetting them, but in remembering yourself more completely than ever before? This is where the rebellion begins. Not against them, not even against the pain, but against the illusion that you need to suffer to prove your love. Marcus Aurelius wasn't heartless. He was fearless. And in the darkest hours of war, betrayal, and loss, he found stillness. Not by numbing, but by seeing clearly. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. This isn't denial, it's mastery. To break free, you must do something that feels radically unnatural at first. You must stop giving your pain a name, stop calling it them, stop saying I miss them, and instead say, I miss the part of me I thought only they could unlock. This is not semantics. This is your mind beginning to reclaim its sovereignty. Step 1 in this rebellion? Disidentify, not from the emotion, feel it, but from the story the emotion tells. Sadness says, they were your happiness. Detachment says, no, they were a mirror. The joy was always yours. Longing whispers, you'll never find this again. Wisdom responds, if it came from you once, it will come again. Stronger, cleaner, freer. Fear cries, you are nothing without them. Courage answers, then let me become everything I was too afraid to be before. This is where you shift from victim to witness, from clinger to creator. And it begins with a single act of defiance. Choose to observe your pain instead of being swallowed by it. This is the Stoic's superpower, to create distance between stimulus and response. To hold emotion in your hand and say, you are not me, you are a visitor. and I will decide what stays. But this rebellion isn't fought alone. History offers us rebels to learn from. Epictetus, once a slave, found freedom in his mind long before he gained it in body. He taught that every desire ties you to fate, but every act of inner discipline ties you to freedom. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. The relationship, beyond your control. Their choices, beyond your control. Your attachment to them, entirely within your control. And when you start to see this, truly see it, something unexpected happens. You no longer crave their presence. You crave your own. You begin to realize that love without dependency isn't emptiness, it's clarity. You can still feel tenderness for them, still wish them peace, but without anchoring your identity in their approval. Because here's the secret the world won't tell you. The highest form of love is detached, not because it cares less, but because it refuses to chain itself to impermanence. Look at the sun. It shines on all, asking nothing in return. Look at the ocean. It lets go of every wave as it arrives. You were never meant to grip so tightly. You were meant to hold and release, feel and let flow, love and not lose yourself. So how do you begin this shift? Here are 3 radical counterintuitive Stoic practices. 1. Voluntary discomfort. Practice going without, not to punish yourself, to prove to your brain that you don't need what you crave. Delete the texts. Don't check their stories. Sit in silence. Eat alone. Feel the ache and survive it. Each time you do, your brain rewires itself. The addiction weakens. The soul strengthens. 2. Negative visualization. Imagine losing more. Not to torture yourself, to desensitize the fear. What if no one ever saw you again the way they did? What if this chapter never reopens? What if this version of love is gone forever? Let that image expand, then notice something. You're still here. You're still breathing. You didn't die. That realization? It's liberation disguised as grief. 3. Premeditation of change. Remind yourself daily, everything you love will change. People evolve, feelings fade, stories end. But what doesn't change is your capacity to hold it all. Your ability to be present with it and not be broken by it. This is the Stoic rebellion. To walk away from the fire, not because it burned you, but because you realized you don't have to live in it to feel alive. At the end of Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. And what is emotional detachment if not the beginning of truly living, of feeling without falling, of loving without losing, of remembering who you were before the story, before the pain, before them?" So here you are at the edge of your old self. The masks are gone, the noise is fading, and the only thing left to do is step forward. But there's one final realization you must uncover. One truth that will transform everything you've read, felt, and thought up to this point. There is a moment, quiet, undramatic, almost invisible, when you stop looking for closure and begin creating it. It doesn't come with grand declarations, not with an epiphany in the shower or a final conversation where everything suddenly makes sense. It comes like the end of winter, subtle, gradual, uneventful, and yet everything changes. You stop wondering what they're thinking. You stop hoping they'll come back. You stop reliving the moments, the words, the touches. But more than that, you stop needing the story to end differently. This is the ultimate truth. You were never attached to them. You were attached to the version of yourself that you became around them. And that version, she's gone, he's gone. They've served their purpose. Now it's time to meet the you who exists beyond the illusion. The you who no longer needs someone else to be the mirror. The you who loves without clinging, who feels without collapsing, who lets go, not as an act of despair, but as a declaration of power. You are not the pain. You are the one who survived the pain. You are not what was lost. You are what remains. This realization doesn't numb you, it revives you. For the first time, you see that your deepest heartbreak was never about another person. It was about your relationship with impermanence, your fear of being alone, your resistance to change, your terror of the unknown. But the Stoics didn't run from impermanence. They embraced it. They sat with the truth that everything we love will one day vanish. And they made peace with it, not because they were cold, but because they had discovered something eternal beneath the temporary virtue, character, inner sovereignty. These are not just lofty ideals. They are anchors in the storm. When Marcus Aurelius lost his wife, his children, his friends, he didn't collapse. He wrote, he reflected, he turned inward, because he knew nothing is truly lost if you carry it rightly. And what you carry from this ending, this detachment, is not the person, it's the lesson, the strength, the proof that you can rise again. The greatest misconception about Stoicism is that it's about not feeling, but the truth is far more beautiful. It's about feeling everything and being mastered by nothing. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you don't hate them, you don't miss them, you don't even need them to understand what they did or why. Because you understand now, you understand yourself. You see the ways you compromised your peace for the sake of closeness. You see how you confuse their validation with your worth. You see the pattern and you end it here. No more chasing ghosts. No more editing your soul to fit into someone else's love story. No more sacrificing your boundaries on the altar of connection. This is the rebirth. Not a new romance, not a glow-up to make them jealous, not revenge disguised as self-improvement, but true, radical inner liberation. Because now you finally grasp the Stoic paradox. To detach is not to stop loving. It is to love from a place so rooted, so complete, that you no longer need the other person to complete you. You can love someone and still walk away. You can miss someone and still not return. You can forgive someone and still never speak to them again. This is emotional alchemy, turning loss into wisdom, turning pain into presence, turning endings into evolution, and perhaps the most haunting truth of all, you were never abandoned. Not by them, not by love, not by life. You simply outgrew the version of yourself that needed them. And that is a kind of spiritual awakening few are brave enough to face. But you reading this now, you've faced it. You've walked through the fire. And what's left is real, is quiet, is whole. No drama, no dependency, just presence, just peace. So now, look in the mirror. Not for validation, not to see if you're better or healed. Look to witness yourself, the one who stayed, the one who rebuilt, the one who no longer flinches in the face of solitude. This is your final Stoic truth. You do not need them. You never did, because you have something far more sacred. You have you. Let go. Not because they were unworthy, but because your peace is. Detach, not to escape love, but to discover it, free from illusion, free from fear, free from the need to be anything but whole. This is not the end of the story. It's the end of a chapter you no longer need. Close the book, not with bitterness, but with reverence. Then, start writing a new one where the hero is not chasing someone else, but becoming someone they can never lose. You are free now, not because they let you go, but because you chose to walk away from the version of yourself who didn't know they could. And in that choice, you didn't just detach, you transcended.